Morning, John.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you perfect. Thank you. Yeah, sorry about that. I don't know. It's weird. Like it said 10 a.m. on my phone, but
Yeah,
when I just looked right now on the Zoom, it did say 11, and I thought, well, let me check my email. I did say 10 Central, right?
yeah, that's what I thought. And then when I pulled up the invite, I was like, well, this says 11, so no big deal.
Okay. Well, thank you for the mix up there. I apologize for that, but well, it was nice. It's nice to meet you. I know Scott had written that email, and he said, "Hey, my brother is doing this great stuff," and so. For me, I like when I do these podcasts, I just like to go in with very little knowledge so
Yep.
that I just can open my, questions up to like I have no idea what you do, right? But the punchline today is about Operation Barbecue Rescue
Barbecue
and
related.
Relief, sorry.
Yeah.
And so what I want to kind of maybe pick your brain about is number one, what were you doing before? And then how did you get involved? And then maybe you can talk a lot about like what you guys are doing and how other people can get involved. So I've had
That,
other guests on talk about, like donating, a kidney and how do you get involved? And people don't know about all the resources that are out there.
right.
So I guess that's where we'll start is, maybe give me the background of what you were doing and how you got involved.
Okay. What time frame are we doing roughly?
But, I have it booked for 2 hours just so that if it does go over on the Zoom hour, I don't want it to end, but as much time as you want,
Sure.
or as little time.
Okay.
So just go ahead. I mean, tell me more about how you got involved in OBR, what prompted you to do it, what you're doing prior to that. And then I think people will be interested to know way more about what you guys are doing, what you've done, and then what's next for that organization.
Okay. Cool. My name's Steve Anderson. I'm the area coordinator in Tennessee for Operation BBQ Relief. I'm a volunteer with OBR. I've been involved with them about 3.5 years. I am a retired healthcare sales executive. Spent most of my career in healthcare IT sales and retired about 7 years ago and did some consulting for a while. And then COVID hit and that kind of put an end to that. And so since then, I've been doing, I guess, what retired people do. But in 2020, Nashville was hit with a pretty devastating tornado. Went through the North Nashville part of town, and I've been a barbecue guy for my whole life. And since I've retired, I've gotten into a little barbecue catering. Some buddies of mine and I, after the tornadoes hit Nashville in 2020, went down to North Nashville, set up at a friend of ours' coffee shop in the parking lot, and just started cooking food. We gave out burgers, hot dogs, wings. We did that for 2 different days, and I think we did roughly 700 meals per day, feeding a lot of the line workers that were there, people that had been displaced from their so especially an apartment building right next to where we were was completely demolished. So fed basically the police, anybody that was doing any work down there. So we did that for a couple of days, and then COVID hit, and so we kind of couldn't do it anymore for that particular event. And so a couple of years later, devastating flood hit Waverly, Tennessee. And I tried to organize the same thing, called my buddies. I said, hey, let's go to Waverly, donate some money. Let's buy some food. Let's go cook. But unfortunately, the town was so devastated that unless you had some kind of access, you could not get in. So I wasn't able to pull it off for Waverly, but right near the end of the Waverly period, I saw Operation Barbecue Relief on the local news. And I see these guys with these huge smokers, tractor trailers with big old hickory smokers on them, and they're feeding thousands of people. And so I said, why am I reinventing the wheel here? let me check out this organization. So after that, I looked them up, found out more about the organization, and then I deployed. My original deployment with OBR was a little over 3 years ago. The floods hit Hazard, Kentucky. So, John, what happens when a flood occurs or a tornado or a hurricane is, as a volunteer Operation BBQ Relief, I have an app on my phone. And so basically it's as simple as you sign up to be a volunteer, and then you download the app, and then any kind of event that is occurring within Operation BBQ Relief, whether it's a disaster related event, or we also do a lot of stuff for veterans and first responders. And I'll talk a little bit more about this camp OBR that we have. But you get notifications through the app of any events that are happening. So you basically sign up for whatever shifts you can. There's a group of us that are kind of core volunteers, and we travel quite a bit. So give you an example. In 2025, I was in California for the wildfires. I was in Kentucky, Pikeville, Kentucky for floods in February. March took us to Cave City, Arkansas for tornadoes. Then back to Kentucky for tornadoes in London, Kentucky. And then in July, the floods in Kerrville, Texas. So we, again, a lot of times we'll use local volunteers as far as boots on the ground. So we definitely need all kinds of volunteers. But again, there's a core group of us that run around that are kind of site leads or culinary leads or, just been doing it for a while, that we kind of take our procedures that we do at Operation BBQ Relief, and we can just plug in local volunteers to any job. You don't have to be a barbecue person to do it. But we can plug people into jobs, and they have, the ability to help. And again, during a disaster, especially, a lot of people want to do something. They just don't know what to do.
Yeah. So going back to the original reason you got involved, and you mentioned it a little bit, but it was all on you. Like you guys paid for all the stuff. Like you just donated all your money and all that.
Yep.
And when you were on your own and did it, like I hear about like a lot of times when there is something like this that goes on that, local police and like you said, local volunteers, they kind of like not that they monopolize it, but like you want to come and you want to help and volunteer. How did that whole like allowing you guys as an organization, like from you know, the food part of it, meaning like, food safety, right? Like all that other stuff. And you'd mentioned they had already done it, but when you did it your first time, it was all you guys, right? Like you just said, "Hey, we want to go help," and you went down there and drove your stuff down there and started cooking food for people. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. It was, again, that was just kind of a bootstrap effort. We were kind of brainstorming about what we can do. Again, we had the pull behind smoker that we used, and I'd use it for catering. And so we just decided that, let's go feed some people. So again, it was donations from some buddies of mine, and we all went down together and cooked food and handed it out to people. So it was pretty cool.
but now when you go to like California, do you just fly yourself or do you take your stuff with you too?
No, the equipment that we use for Operation BBQ Relief is owned by OBR. We've got several warehouses around the country. Our primary warehouse for our equipment is in Johnson City, Tennessee.
Okay.
So, give an example. Last year, when Hurricane Helene hit the Panhandle, we had Operation BBQ Relief had sent out notification. Obviously, it was coming in as a Category 4, very serious hurricane. And so our group basically gathered a lot of the equipment in Birmingham, Alabama, and staged there because the storm was predicted to go up through Georgia. So literally within 24 hours of the hurricane coming on shore near Tallahassee, we were set up in Tallahassee with equipment, fired it up. I think we served 75 meals for the Coast Guard that night. But then the next day we started really generating a lot of meals. And so, Helene hit, and then a couple weeks later, Milton came through Tampa. So for Helene, we had set up in Tallahassee. We also opened up at our warehouse in St. Petersburg. started cooking down there. We started cooking at our warehouse in Johnson City, Tennessee for East Tennessee, and then set up in Hendersonville, North Carolina, which is south of Asheville, and started feeding there. So then when Milton came through, we had to pull everybody out of St. Pete up to Tallahassee. Milton went through, everybody from Tallahassee went back down because that's obviously where the hardest hit area was. But just to give you an idea of scale, John, we during those two hurricanes, we were deployed for a total of 34 days in those four locations. We served almost 1.4 million hot meals. So
Yeah, well, I'm just a little quick personal thing. We vacation, we started going to Destin maybe 4 years ago, and then St. Pete, Clearwater, that area. So we were there the prior year before the hurricane, and then we just went back this year, and we saw pictures like online of how like the sand was just like all the way across the streets and stuff like
yeah,
that. So I'm assuming you guys, when you go in, you're like you're saying, you're setting up somewhere where you can set up, right? And then you stayed for whatever, how many days. But yeah, that's amazing stuff. I mean, a million meals. And so maybe let's back up and start with, because you had your own thing and then you joined the OBR people. How long ago did the OBR people start the organization, and how did they get funding and stuff like that?
great question. Yeah, the original genesis, I guess, of Operation BBQ Relief was when the F5 tornadoes hit Joplin, Missouri in 2011. A couple of our founders were Kansas City pitmasters that did high-end competition. And so one of them was leaving to go to work one day after the tornado had hit Joplin. They lived in Kansas City, and one of their wives said, "Hey, why don't you call your barbecue buddies and go to Joplin and cook?" Well, they went to Joplin again, kind of the same thing that I did with my buddies here in Nashville. They went to Joplin, took food, thinking they would do a few thousand meals over a couple of days. 10 days later, they had done 125,000 meals. And so after that event, two guys sat down and said, "Hey, there's a need for this. Anytime a disaster happens, people, especially the first responders, the line crews that are out there, those guys work unbelievable hours, and a lot of times they eat peanut butter sandwiches. So we have a thing where, again, part of the core of Operation BBQ Relief is we believe in the healing power of barbecue. And so, there's nothing like a nice hot barbecue sandwich, with your buddies in the backyard. So we kind of have taken that out on the road, and you hand somebody a hot meal and they look at you and they go, "Thank you. This is the first hot meal I've had in 4 or 5 days." It means a lot.
Yeah.
So as far as the organization itself, John, we have some great corporate sponsors that help. Old Hickory, as I mentioned them, they make large rotisserie smokers that are powered by propane. We put wood in them as well. They're a sponsor, and basically we have tractor trailers with 2, 3, 4, 5 of these huge smokers on them that we roll into town with. We also, have from the product standpoint, we have some really good sponsors. Prairie Fresh is a big sponsor. In the past, we've worked with a lot of the different people. National Beef Company, 2 years ago at Hurricane Ian down in Port Charlotte, Florida, they donated 2 tractor trailers of brisket. So we definitely have the scale to be able to take product and produce large quantities of food. But again, Lowe's is a big corporate sponsor. Walmart has become very active with us. A lot of times when we go into especially some of the smaller communities, we'll cook at a site, but we'll go to Walmart and set up out front because people are coming to buy supplies and all that. Yeah. So again, it is a pretty cool organization as far as responding to disasters.
Yeah. I always wondered, like, what happened, or what did people do before you guys,
There's a lot of other feeding organizations out there. Red Cross, Salvation Army, Samaritan's Purse, a lot of different organizations that have a similar mission. World Central Kitchen is probably, they're probably one of the more notable organizations that do kind of what we do. There's room for all of us. Again, depending on where we go, sometimes we're the ones that cook the food. We give it to Red Cross, they take it out and distribute it. So there's a lot of different mechanisms that we use to get food to people that need it.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to make it into like this competition thing, but it seems like, you know, is there ever been a time where there's too many people?
We've become pretty good, I think, John, as far as gauging where the need is, how long we need to stay. Obviously, if an area has been hit by, floods, tornadoes, there's a certain amount of time where they have to get back on their feet. But also, we don't want to negatively impact the economy of that local community. So, for example, once restaurants start opening back up,
Yeah.
we kind of gauge it, and we've gotten pretty good at that as far as being able to determine, when's the right time to pull out. And again, we try to collaborate with the other feeding groups around just to, again, it's not a competition, but we want to be mindful of the community and make sure the community has the ability to recover on its own with some help from groups like ours.
So getting into like the kind of details of how it would work. So there's you guys have that app, but I'm assuming that somebody from OBR is probably in communication with someone from like FEMA or one of these other organizations that are local, right? So
Yep.
then they can engage and say, "Hey, we're coming," or "You guys don't need to come." I mean, I'm sure there's that kind of communication going on. And then the next question I have is, so you volunteer and you go. So you fly to California for the fires. And I'm assuming that all of those people that are supporting the effort to like put out the fire and like you said, the police, the firemen, they have to stay somewhere. So like when you go, I would feel like, okay, there's 50 people from OBR. Where are you guys staying
Yep.
typically? And most of the time, I'm assuming that those hotels and wherever else are going to be full with the other people. I don't know. Tell me how
Yeah.
that works.
Yeah, so a couple of things there. Yeah, you're very accurate in the standpoint that we are in constant communication with, and primarily it's at a state level.
Okay.
So, for example, in when Helene was coming into the Panhandle area, um, one of our leaders that works for OBR, he basically went to the Emergency Operations Center in Tallahassee, the EOC, and he was at the table with all the different groups that are part of that emergency operations group. So again, state of Florida, we've done a lot with them, and so that kind of ties into where do people stay and all that. We do have, as part of our equipment, we have a couple of bunkhouses that are on tractor trailers that we pull in that can house 20 people
Yeah.
in a trailer. We have some people that, again, some of our guys are competition barbecue guys. They've got their RVs and their rigs that they take and have a place to stay. I personally have a Toyota Sequoia, and there's been several times I've got an air mattress that I can blow up that I sleep in the back of my vehicle. And again, we bring in. It's kind of like a military operation, a military kitchen, if you will. We bring in not only the bunk houses, we also have another trailer that has 4 showers, 4 bathrooms, a laundry center. And back to Helene and Milton, the state of Florida, because we work closely with them, they also provided us with some additional bunk houses because we did have a large number of volunteers that needed a place to sleep. We've worked with FEMA, obviously. They, again, have some resources around bunk houses or tents or big areas with cots and stuff. So it's not glamorous, but there's also again, people that travel in. Obviously, we try to make sure that. So, for example, if I'm going to go to a deployment, I've got to commit for at least 3 days of work to have a place to sleep. We also work with an organization called Airlink, and Airlink is another not-for-profit, and their mission is to pair groups like ours with the airlines. So, for example, when I flew to California last year for the wildfires, United Airlines provided a ticket for me to fly from Nashville to LA to be able to work.
And who funds that? It's what is it, Airlink? Just like
Airlink,
a chart? Wow.
yeah. Again, I think some people donate. If some people will donate their miles
Yeah, okay.
back to the airlines,
Yeah.
and so the airlines again work with Airlink to provide open seats that they can use to help people travel into areas like that.
It's like I think I mentioned earlier in the podcast about how there's a lot of times I feel like people don't know where all these resources are, right? Like I worked at Deere and your brother and I worked together at John Deere, and there's just so many resources everywhere. I feel like, the Airlink thing and then OBR, like just I think the creating the awareness and more people I'll share all the links and everything like that where people can go and sign up. So that leads me to my next question of, okay, um, how many total volunteers do you guys have as an organization and then regionally and all that? And then when there is a disaster, like say, the hurricane in Florida, like how many people do you guys know, hey, we need 35 people ahead of time? Like explain that, how that all works.
Yeah. So again, the more experience we've had doing this, John, the better we've gotten at as far as what kind of numbers we need to run the site based upon how many meals we're trying to produce. So, for example, if we're doing, 10,000 meals a day, then we kind of have a rough idea of how many people we need. So again, we get into a lot of math, and we have an expression: "Mathing is hard," because you figure out, okay, if we're going to produce 10,000 meals, how many pork butts do we have to cook the night before to have those ready the next day? And then how many side dishes do you need? In addition to the big smokers, we have what we call tilt skillets. And those are what we prepare the side dishes in. So, for example, each tilt skillet, you've probably seen, if you've been in a restaurant kitchen, you've probably seen a big tilt skillet. But you can produce 1,000 servings of green beans, for example, out of one tilt skillet. So again, just to look at scale again, the largest number of meals that we did down in St. Pete after Milton, we did almost 70,000 meals in one day. So in that operation, for example, Amazon had basically loaned us a Amazon distribution center that had never been opened. And so we had 15 of those large smokers. Each one of those smokers holds at least 80 pork butts. We had 15 of those smokers. Each one has a capability of 80 pork butts set up outside this Amazon distribution center. We had all of our dry goods, plates, cutlery, all the vegetables inside the Amazon warehouse. And then we had, I think it was 18 tractor trailers backed up to the warehouse that contained protein products. So our forklift drivers would basically pull into the back of a tractor trailer, get a pallet of pork butts, bring them over to the pits. We take those, load them, cook them all night, and then we have a team that processes them the next day. It's an incredible operation to see that in action.
So you mentioned, the app and getting notification. So like a hurricane, you at least have a week to prepare, right? And the weather, well, I'm just saying like at around that time, right?
Yeah.
You say, hey, they evacuate people if they're in the path and all that. So like from the time that okay, this is going to be really bad to that description you just said of having 18, trailers full of all this food, like
Right.
how long does that take to get there? Because then you got to either, those guys got to physically drive. You got like someone coordinating, transportation manager. I mean, there's probably a lot more going on behind the scenes with a lot more people than just, hey, you just said like you showed up and there's all this food and you're going to cook it with all the cookers and this. It seems like there's way more involved with that in that process.
Yeah. So we've got, I think the organization has 25, 30 people that work for the organization. The rest of us are just volunteers. So as part of that core, the employed people at Operation BBQ Relief, we've got a logistics team. So the logistics team is basically in charge of, okay, and the guy that runs it is out of Texas. He basically is working with our warehouse in Johnson City, trying to figure out what kind of equipment we need to send down, let's just say for Tallahassee, for Helene, what kind of equipment we need to get down there. And then, what kind of food products. So again, we've got warehouses where we store dry goods, and we have certain capability to store frozen protein product. But again, when something that big is going down, our logistics team is working with Prairie Fresh or the National Beef Company, or a lot of times we'll have to buy product and have that shipped in. So again, the large scale deployments, we are able to pool those resources and go. Another example, though, if we have a small tornado that hits London, Kentucky, for example, we took two smokers up there. We had a refrigerator trailer that we pulled behind us. And we had trucks that kept coming and restocking that refrigerated trailer so we could continue to cook. And we were doing probably, I think in London, 3,000 meals a day. So again, that sounds like a lot. It's kind of on the smaller scale. But again, you're right. The logistics around all that operation is pretty amazing.
So I think I don't remember if you answered this one, but I asked about how many volunteers in the network.
Yeah, that's a hard number because, for example, when the tornadoes hit Nashville in 2020, before I was involved, we had quite a few volunteers from the Nashville area that signed up to be volunteers. They may or may not have done anything since that time. So we keep a rolling roster. We do have people basically renew once a year. We do a simple background check. So they have to have their background check done once a year. So that kind of keeps the roster current.
Yeah.
But it really depends. I mean, we've done so much work in Florida. We have a huge number of volunteers down in that area. Kerrville, Texas, I think was a really good example because we only had a couple of us from out of town that came in. And we had new volunteers basically every day. We were running probably 35 or 40 volunteers as part of the team down there. We were doing about 4,000 meals a day. But every morning when I was the site lead down there, we do a safety meeting every morning. And one of the things we do is, how many new volunteers are here today? And people raise their hand. In Kerrville, it was probably somewhere around 60 to 70% brand new volunteers each day in Kerrville. And again, it was just a lot of people in that area, whether it's Kerrville, San Antonio, Austin, they wanted to do something to help. So again, we go into situations like that where, loss of life, especially there where, children were involved. Some of those deployments get, a little emotional. So, again, but the cool part is seeing a community come together like that and have new volunteers every day that just step in, cook barbecue, cook green beans, and get meals out to people.
Yeah. Share with you about the people, and how people rally and get involved. So I can't remember what year it was. Let's just say it was after 2012. Do you remember when there was a tornado that went through Oklahoma?
Yep.
And I can't remember what the city it went through, but we had a construction company. We had this event every year in Deer. It was like an experience for the customers to come to Moline.
Okay.
And so a customer of mine with the dealer in Oklahoma, CL Boyd, the dealer, John Deere dealer, construction dealer, they were flying here and this tornado hit. So when they landed in Moline, we had already arranged for the Deere corporate jet because their part of their construction business was was like site clear up and development and disaster relief and all that. And so as soon as they landed, these guys found out how bad it was a pretty bad tornado. I can't remember what city it was in, but anyway, we put them on the Deere private jet and flew them back so that they could get working on rebuilding and helping and doing all that kind of stuff. So it's always, to me, is always impressive, like how, I feel like today's world and society is filled with so much negativity, right? Because that's what
Yep.
is on the news. And
Right.
then you're like, wait a second. It's that whole math equation of like, you do nine things right, but you get yelled at for the one thing you do wrong.
Yeah.
So there's 90% of it is good, right? Like even maybe more than that. And I feel like that the stuff like this that you hear about is just under, I guess, promoted, right?
Yeah.
I also love when, there's like an anonymous donation and I'm like, I felt like, well, I get it, anonymous, you want to be anonymous. But to me, it's like if I say, hey, I'm donating and Steve Anderson is donating his time, I feel like it makes people that know you or around you, oh wow, if he's doing that, why can't I do? That's the whole thing about my show is like, why not me? I'm just sitting here doing nothing. What am I gonna do? You
Yeah.
know? It's really cool to hear those stories though about, rallying around. It sucks tragedy. And I'll lead to my next question is like, okay, I hate to say this, but okay, now the organization exists. It has like full-time employees or volunteers. And then what are you guys doing when you're not doing that? And I feel like there's something I think about
Yeah.
um, that other part
Yeah.
of the organization.
Yeah. So we we've gotten a lot more involved over the last few years in doing what we call blue sky days, or and a lot of this folds under what we call the always serving project. So we will do a lot of different events around the country. For example, last May 4th, I don't know if you know, May 4th is National Firefighters Memorial Day. So
Okay.
again, to honor those that have served and passed. Um, we cooked, I can't remember the number of firehouses, but it was somewhere around 50 different warehouses scattered throughout the country where we had, individual little teams like myself and two people here. We went to
Hmm.
Franklin, Tennessee, which is a suburb community here, and we cooked for 9 firehouses. And all the firefighters stopped by this one firehouse and picked up the food and took it back to their places. We do a lot of events for veterans and first responders where Veterans Day. We typically will do stuff. I know Huntsville, Alabama. There's a parade down there every year. Well, our group feeds the volunteers that work at that parade, and then we'll go into veterans' home, large veteran homes, and feed people there. Back, this is something we've gotten involved with the last 2 years. Tracy Lawrence, who's the country artist here in Nashville, we've gotten involved with Tracy's foundation. He started out kind of a similar thing to me and my buddies taking a smoker. He started out in his backyard with some buddies frying turkeys, and so they started frying all these turkeys, and then they looked up one day and it was like, what are we going to do with all these turkeys? So Tracy and his team started going to different homeless areas in the Nashville area the Tuesday before Thanksgiving. They'd fry these turkeys and then they would take it to different homeless places, and then they got involved with the Nashville Rescue Mission and started providing food to them. And so just to give you an example of how two groups like ours can come together, we got involved 2 years ago. Tracy's team deep fried somewhere around 800 turkeys. We brought in our big smokers, and last year we did 680 turkeys. This past Thanksgiving, we basically doubled that number, and we did about 1,200 turkeys that we smoked. They cooked 800 fried, and so that's 2,000 turkeys that went out to different areas, homeless, but also people with food insecurity. I mean, obviously that's a big problem, and so I never thought about it, but around Thanksgiving weekend, kids, have 4 days that they're not in school
Yeah.
where they don't have the food program.
Yeah.
So, stuff like that. Again, we get involved with different organizations. Again, Tracy's group has been great to work with. And I'll share a short story. We were smoking turkeys Monday night, and one of our team went back down to our cook site to check on. There was a storm coming in. He was going to lower some tents and check on our smokers because we had 700 turkeys loaded in there cooking. And he got there, and the security guard came up and said, "Hey, just refrigerator truck over here is beeping. So he called myself. I was the site lead and one of our culinary guys. So Joey and I went back down to the fairgrounds, tried to get this truck working properly because it had 660 turkeys in it. We ended up calling Penske at midnight. They got a guy there by 1 o'clock, and it goes back to your food safety thing. We knew that we had a window of about 4 hours where that food was going to be safe.
Yeah.
Well, the guy could not get the trailer fixed or the truck fixed. So we ended up having to make the decision that morning at 5 o'clock in the morning. It was like, hey, we can't cook those turkeys. So Tracy's people were on the local news. I did a couple of interviews, basically put out a call to say, hey, this happened last night. We're short 600 and something turkeys and what we were going to cook. Kudos to the national community. The National Rescue Mission called up and said, hey, we've got 300 turkeys in our freezer. Can you use those? Food insecurity organization here in Franklin called One Gen Away stepped up. They called and said, hey, we got 100 turkeys. Can you guys use those? So basically we had 400 turkeys immediately, but all throughout the day, people in cars were coming, dropping off turkeys at the fairgrounds. And I think collectively, they got somewhere around 2,000 turkeys donated just from the community. I mean, country music artists, one guy pulled up, can't remember his name, had 100 turkeys in his truck. Said, hey, I stopped by Costco and bought these. Can you use them? So again, groups like that coming together, those are the kinds of things that we're doing more of that are not disaster related. The third leg of Operation BBQ Relief is, again, the organization's based out of Kansas City. The organization acquired 190 acres at Lake of the Ozarks about 4 years ago. And over the last couple of years has turned that into a camp that we do a lot of veterans programs there, where we bring in Gold Star families or people that may have lost somebody in the line of duty, bring in families together, and we do what we call culinary therapy. So they come in and they have the ability to, as a family unit, they can come and they can hunt, they can hike, they can boat, they can, we have skeet range, we got archery, but 3 times during the day, they come together and learn culinary skills. So part of the concept is, especially when we bring families in, is those families have something after they leave Camp OBR, they can go back to their homes and do something together. Because there's a lot of programs for veterans, but not that many for veterans and their families.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if you heard or know of, I was listening to a podcast Theo Vaughn had on Gary Sinise.
Yeah. Yep.
And
Gary's,
Gary,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah, so their foundation just moved to the Franklin area here.
Okay.
Let's see, when was it? Back in November, we hooked up with the Sinise Foundation and Sunbelt Rentals, who also, they sponsor a lot of equipment for us. So Sunbelt, Gary Sinise, and us, we went down to a volunteer firehouse south of Franklin. We cooked a barbecue meal for 50 people that are involved with that volunteer fire department. So the Sinise Foundation did a sorry.
No, you're good.
The Sinise Foundation gave a very substantial check to that volunteer fire organization at that event. So we're working more and more with groups like Gary's Foundation to, in fact, Gary's Foundation just built a house for one of our core volunteers who lost a leg in the Middle East. Joe Bowser, he just moved into his new house near Clarksville, Tennessee, 3 weeks ago. So again, that's kind of cool synergy that you get in this world.
Yeah.
And it gets back to the why not me that you mentioned. We have a thing within OBR. Everybody has their why moment. So why are you involved with OBR? Yeah. And so each one of those is different. Mine came from handing a hot meal to a lady who was going to turn 95 years old the next day. So you do stuff like that, and that's our why. So why not
Yeah.
me?
Yeah.
And the beauty of this group is you don't have to be a barbecue expert. Some of us think we're pretty good, but you don't have to be an expert. But we have some people that have won Memphis in May and competitions like that. We have some really good pit masters, but we also have all kinds of needs. People that can just make a plate, or people that can wash dishes. I mean,
Yeah.
it's incredible to see people come from all walks of life, all faiths to get involved and help.
Yeah, because I mean, you're right. I mean, there's probably only so many cooks you can have, right? And in the kitchen, then everybody else is, doing the prep work, and then, like you said, servers, right? Because if you're thinking you're doing 10,000 meals a day, that that's not people just coming up and grabbing stuff. That's being prepped and having it ready and serving and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, like paper plates and plastic forks and knives and stuff like that. So yeah, it's amazing that when you see it all come together, right? Like, I mean, like you said, when you get 40 new volunteers, it's pretty easy to figure out what you need to do when you're trying to just serve food, right? It's not like
Right.
you guys are building, an engine or something. It's pretty easy stuff to kind of do. And I think it's effortless, in my opinion. That's what I was getting at. It's like, it only takes a little bit to volunteer and do something really great.
Yep.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Um, the thing that made me think of the Gary Sinise thing, because you mentioned the families, right? And I think, I can't, I'll get it wrong, but I know he had said something like, they started in, I think they were in Dallas, in the Texas area, and they were sending, maybe a bunch of families of Gold Star families that to Disney World. I think they were sending them to Disneyland at first, and then they were like, wait a minute, why don't we just send them to Disney World? So that made me think of I mean, there's so many veterans that or veterans families that got left behind that
Yep.
he's been helping out. That's cool to know. I figured you'd know who he was or what he
Yeah.
was doing.
Yeah, and I talked to one of his people at that event that we did in November, and I think we're going to try to do more together as organizations because again, we have the ability to bring in equipment and cook thousands of meals at a time.
Yeah. I think he said that they started with the whole, like, I think California fires, donating the food and going and serving food. And then, I think they renamed it to the foundation versus like there was another name because now they're doing way more than just that, right? And
Yeah,
I'm assuming, like you just explained, you guys are doing way more than this disaster, relief thing. And so I think for the people listening, hopefully they're, like going to get something out of this and motivate them to do something. And like I mentioned, is what's I'll physically put the websites and stuff like that, but what is the OBR? What's their kind of website and all that?
yeah, it's obart.org. Very simple. There are tabs on the homepage. One of them says "Become a Volunteer," so it's as simple as going on obr.org, clicking on "Become a Volunteer," fill out a short form. A quick background check is done, and then once that's complete, you're certified as a volunteer. Um, there are certain food safety things that, once you become very involved, like I have, we go through food safety training, just like
Yeah.
you would in a restaurant. We do a safety meeting every morning for new volunteers. We go through the basics about keeping, your gloves on and, cleanliness and, because the last thing we want to do is make somebody ill that's been through what they've been through. So again, we do a lot of food safety training in our group, and there's a lot of people that are involved to really help do this kind of work. And again, most of them are volunteers like myself that just have a passion for it and have become involved and try to go help people.
And does it, and I guess I'm get because everybody can be mobile. It doesn't matter where you live.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
So we've been to, as far as disaster response, we've been to pretty much the majority of the U.S. except for upper Midwest, I guess. It's again, most states we've had some type of activity. We do have again area coordinators in just about every state. Well, some of them have to cover multiple states.
Yeah.
But again, there's people like me that are trying to grow, the volunteer organizations. We've had a big influx lately in the Chicago area where we've had a couple of core volunteers that have gotten involved in Chicago. And, they've been doing a lot in addition to disaster work, trying to do a lot more blue sky or always
Mhm.
serving projects in up in that area. So again, we've got pockets around the country. Obviously, Florida is big just because of the massive amount of work that we've done down there. But yeah, we're all over the country, and if you're interested in helping, we can always use more volunteers.
And then you mentioned that Airlink or whatever, I think it was Airlink. There, so then on your site or on the site, is there other stuff, other resources like that stuff available through there, or you just have to kind of know through working with you guys?
Yeah, it kind of evolves. I think we do specific air link. That's one of those where if you want to sign up, but you're 1,000 miles away from where something's going on, you have to reach out to. We have a volunteer organization that basically is our virtual volunteers, and so the virtual volunteers work with people like me that said, "Hey, I can go to Texas, and then work on the logistics of arranging a Airlink ticket to go." So again, there's communication over and above what we have in the app through emails back to the virtual volunteers.
Yeah. You mentioned you had your why, but do you have a maybe like I'm assuming there's also going to be, you're if you're gone for 30 days, it could get a little, like you said. I mean, there could be, loss of life and everything like that. Is there another kind of angle on the support part of it for the
Yep.
volunteers?
Yes. Yeah. So we have an 800 number, a counseling number. Again, we post that every deployment we go on. We also try to rotate people out. So, for example, if I'm a site lead or I'm a culinary lead, we typically don't like for somebody to be in that role longer than 7 to 10 days. And there have been several times when we've they've told people it's like, "Hey, Steve, you need to go somewhere for a couple of days and get away from this."
Yeah.
And again, if you get into certain situations that are emotional, Maui was another one that was like that. You end up, you end up having to balance the emotions of the work, and it is good for people to get a break, get away. I mean, for example, the Helene and Milton. I was down in Tallahassee for 10 days for Helene. Came back home. I had driven down, so I drove back home, and then I took about a week off and called back to the leadership and said, "Hey, where do you need me? I can go to Tampa, Tallahassee, Johnson City, wherever." And I ended up going back down to the St. Pete area for 10 days down there.
Yeah. Like I said, we were there this past year within the last 6 months, and like we did, there was a lot of places that still didn't reopen.
Yeah.
I mean, it got pretty wiped out. But then there was some, a lot of the places where they did recover, and it's cool to see that. But I mean, it got hit pretty bad.
Yep.
So anything else you want to share, like the last kind of maybe, I mean, we can, wrap it up here. And I really appreciate you doing this. Like I said, I've known Scott. I knew Scott since I started working at in Moline and Deer for a long time. Do you live in Franklin near him, or you live in a different city?
Yeah, I live probably 8 miles away from my brother, who is now a noted author.
Yeah, I
But
know it's really cool, like to see. He said he had another book, I think, that
yep,
he's either
he's
coming out or
almost finished. Yep.
okay. Yeah, it's just like when him and I were talking, he's like, you'd be surprised how many like writer networks are out there locally. And it's the same thing with this, right? Like I had no idea about OBR until he told me about it. And I feel like again, I love sharing that kind of stuff because, if you're just sitting around, you can always do something, right? I mean, I hope, right? Unless you're raising small kids and all that kind of stuff, but there's always time. And there's a lot of things or a lot of areas where you could just help out. And so I appreciate the stuff that you guys are doing. I'll share all those links. Anything last you want to share about the whole experience that you had going from, retiring and doing this? Because I'll give you one quick one. I always felt like, so I run ultra races, marathons and stuff like that. And I've told this story a couple times, but I always, when I was a pacer, like a support person for someone that was running the race, I
Yep.
felt like I got more out of that helping them than I did when I ran the race. I mean, it's just, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean it is kind of interesting, John, because I talk to friends who obviously know my passion for this, and they say you're doing God's work, and that's very humbling. But it's something that, like you say, everybody can do it. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm very fortunate in my life that I'm healthy enough and able enough, and have the wherewithal to be able to travel and do this. And it has become obviously a passion of mine. But again, it's just the simple act of handing a hot meal to somebody and them giving you a smile and a thank you that
Yeah.
it's really hard to do that. And I mean, there are a lot of us that are heavily involved with Operation BBQ Relief that we like to share that passion, and we like for new people to have that experience. In fact, one of the things we try to do, because as you can imagine, if you're doing 50,000 meals out of one site, you can get locked in and just stay in the kitchen 24/7 for
Yeah.
10 days.
Yeah.
And we really try to encourage people, especially new volunteers, to go out where they'll physically be handing a meal to a person, because that gives them the why, as far
Yeah.
as why am I back here in this kitchen doing all this work? Well, you hand that
Yeah.
person that meal, and that basically hits home that, okay, this is why we're doing this, and we're doing it thousands of times a day.
Yeah.
So pretty
That's the
cool.
rubber meeting the road. That's the connection, right? To the human connection of like what the tragedy to, hey, we can heal through this.
Yep.
Well, I appreciate you doing this. I think you're doing great work. I don't know how that, I guess, I don't know. I'll put all the links in this and I'll put it on Facebook post. I'll copy you on
Yep.
the email and before I write
Sure.
some stuff like that. But
Yep.
again, I thank you for doing this. I really appreciate it. And congratulations on starting something and it growing into like this passion of helping people through OBR and all the other stuff that you guys are doing.
Yeah, I mean, I would just encourage people to sign up, and you may or may not, have an, you never know when disasters are going to happen in your area. But also, again, with doing a lot of the always serving projects, there are other ways to get involved with Operation BBQ Relief. I would encourage people to give it a try, and it may be your sweet spot, it may not, but again, there's a lot of us that have a lot of passion for it, and it's opened a lot of doors for me. Again, I mentioned I do some catering, but I've learned through cooking with some of these championship pit masters. I've learned a lot of techniques and stuff that I use, and I had this place where I was doing an event, and they originally said, "Well, it's going to be 100 people." They called me a couple of days ahead and said, "Oh, looks like it's going to be closer to 150." I was like, "Okay."
Yeah.
And the lady running the place said, "It's okay." And I said,
Yeah.
"Sure." I said, "That's, 50 more meals. That's no big deal." So working through OBR has given me some confidence, even in my little personal business where, 100 meals I can do that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. Okay, well, thank you so much, Steve. I really appreciate it. It was nice meeting you, nice talking to you. Tell Scott I said hi. Um, and thank you.
Thank you, John. I appreciate the time.
All right,
Take care.
take care.